Welcome, welcome everybody to the Daily Huddle Spiritual Matters Thursdays. I am your host, Dr. Monikah Ogando, and I am excited to be here with you today because we are talking about the secrets in the Egypt temples. Now, typically, this would be around the time where I would be frolicking and gallivanting around in Egypt, taking an august group of people through their own mystery school tour and initiation process that I co-facilitate with my darling friend, Natalie Oliver Atherton. But this year, I am home. I am still in Atlanta, and I still want to talk to you about the secrets in Egypt temples because it is very much a metaphor for the evolution of your own spiritual maturity. And then if you can see some of the places where you have things in common with the most ancient of temples in the planet, then perhaps you can get some perspective about where your journey is and be patient with yourself and get some perspective. So welcome to the Daily Huddle. Yes, yes. Hello, hello, one and all. Welcome to the Daily Huddle Spiritual Matters Thursdays. Like I said, I'm your host, Dr. Monikah Ogando, and I'm excited to be here with you today. We're going to talk about the secrets in the Egypt temples. Now, if you go to a mystery school tour with me and with Natalie, which I just mentioned is my co-facilitator, then we would take you through the same temples that ancient initiates would embark upon in order to achieve a certain level of priesthood, a certain level of erudition, I should say, in their own spiritual journey, because those temples are organized and placed along the Nile in the same way as your chakras are along your spine. Does Nile and spine rhyme? Or is it just the same sound, different consonants? No matter. Robin's laughing at me. So before we start talking about that, let's get grounded in the now moment. Since I've already made Robin chuckle. Robin, how are you? And what are you thankful for?
I am the way I say I am, and I am fantastic. And today I am just thankful, period. Everything, for all of it.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. I love that. Thank you so much. And of course, our lovely Rashida is here. Rashida, where are you? And who are you hugging today?
Good morning. Good morning. I am in Pennsylvania. I'm back in my setting. And who I'm going to hug today. I already hugged my tree because I just love connecting with nature so early in the morning. It's like, for me, it's like, welcome. I just feel that that's so vivid into my flesh. And I'm going to hug my dog, Black. I missed him so much. When he saw me, he said, "Lady, you back?"
Right. But I want to get too excited. Let me just ask the question first. I love it.
Exactly. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Rashida. Thank you, Robin. I am so excited to talk to you about this topic today because I think you'll notice some of the correspondences in your own spiritual journey. And if you are interested in going to Egypt with us, then of course, reach out to me, send me a DM, private message me, and I'll make sure that you get the information that you need. All right, so when we began the mystery school tour, we started off in Abu Simbel. If you have a map of Egypt, and I'm not sure if I can actually I've never done this before, if you can do a, what is it? like a map of Egypt, if you actually saw the way that the Nile starts off, first of all, the Nile flows upwards, right? And so the south of Egypt is actually the north geographically, because the south is actually the bottom of it, and the bottom is at the north point. So that's one particularity about the Nile that is uncommon with the other rivers in the planet. So we start in Abu Simbel, which is geographically the southernmost point, but it is the beginning of the journey, and it corresponds to the root chakra. It is flanked, if you've ever seen it, it is flanked by 4 huge colossi. 4 huge colossi. And if I were to, oh my goodness, if I were to liken those 4 colossi to your own consciousness, then it would be the physical body, the emotional body, the mental body, and then the spiritual body. And it is no accident. I'm trying to find a picture so I can show it to you. It is no accident that the colossi that is representative of the emotional body literally has the head cut off. It actually fell off, or in some earthquake or in some natural disaster. I'm gonna share my screen so that I can show you what I'm talking about. Oh, look, we could do it. We could do it. Yay. Okay, do you see what I mean? So there's, like, on the far left, there's the physical body, and then there's the emotional body that has its head literally at its feet. And then you have the door and the gateway. And then you have the mental body and the spiritual body towards the right. And we begin in Abu Simbel because that is the beginning of anybody's spiritual journey. You first have to get grounded in who and where you are, just like how we ask here in the daily huddle. It is part of our ritual to ask you, where are you and how are you and what are you thankful for and who are you going to hug? Those are pieces that connect you physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually as well. You thought it was just clever questions. No, everything has a purpose, right? And so we begin in Abu Simbel because it allows you to really get clear about your own spiritual journey of where you are beginning, right? It also corresponds, if we're looking at all of those parallel teachings, it also corresponds to the constellation or the astrological sign of Leo. And Leo's affirmation is, I am, right? It is kind of like, I'm here, like a testament to their own individual identity, right? As a fire sign. Then we go to the next temple, which is the Philae temple. Philae is associated with the temple of Isis. And because it is associated with the temple of Isis, Isis is the goddess that represents the feminine aspect of God in Egyptian mysticism. In Egyptian mysticism, Isis is actually the Greek word for her. In Egyptian, it is Auset, A-U-S-E-A-T. And it is no accident that the Philae temple is actually in an island. So it's surrounded by water, just like the womb of the feminine would be all water, right? Like the baby would be surrounded by the water of the womb. And it's so interesting to me. You know how there's a saying that says blood is thicker than water, right? And it is assuming to say that your biological family should hold more importance than people who are just friends. Well, the actual saying, the full quote, actually says the opposite. It says the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. So that means that the chosen bonds that you make a covenant with are more significant than the bonds of family or the water of the womb. So you're actually saying the opposite when you say the blood is thicker than water. I just thought that was a nice little trivia thing to throw at you when we're talking about the Temple of Isis, because the Temple of Isis talked about and represents the water of the womb. And along the astrological signs, it also represents Gemini, the sacral chakra, which is associated with the womb. And it is all about your intuition, your emotions, your inner knowing. Then we move to the third temple in Egypt, which is Komombo. Komombo. I actually flipped those. Isis actually represents Cancer, and Cancer is like the mother sign, right? Next, Komombo is Gemini, and it is the reason why I know that and I remember that is because Komombo is the only temple that is a dual temple. When you enter Komombo in the center gates, there's a right side temple and then there's a left side temple. And the right side is kind of like this labyrinth that you just keep going and going and going, kind of like a hamster wheel, kind of like the meaninglessness of purposeless life, right? Until you make a decision that you are going to align yourself with the will of the divine, with the will of God, and then you graduate yourself to the left side of the temple. And so Komombo is represented by Gemini because of its dual nature, and Gemini also is a dual sign. And so by the time that we get to Edfu, Edfu is the fourth temple. Edfu represents like where the battle is fought and won. It has a huge courtyard. When you first go into Edfu, it has a huge courtyard, and you have to literally walk yourself into the Holy of Holies of the temple. And that's actually what happens in your heart chakra. That's actually what happens at the Taurus astrological sign, which is a representative of once you make that decision at the solar plexus level of like, okay, my will is aligned with the will of the divine. That's what the solar plexus represents, is your personal will. So when you align your personal will to the will of the divine, then you just got to walk it out. The battle has already been won. You just have to walk it out. You just have to gather your own breadcrumbs, right? And so I want to stop right here and check in with you about where do you see that this is corresponding with your own spiritual journey. You may have been at a place where you're just kind of gathering yourself in a survival state, and you don't know where you're left from your right, and you're like, oh, I'm just glad I made it, right? And so there's that physicality of it where we concern ourselves with materiality, which is represented by the root chakra. But then eventually you start kind of thinking there's got to be more than this. And there's a sense of dissatisfaction, but you don't know what you don't know. And you begin learning, you begin seeking, and you begin asking questions. And for some people, asking questions can seem blasphemous, can seem insulting to the divine. But I remember very, very clearly that there is a verse in the Bible that says, come, let us reason together. I think it's in Isaiah. And so for me, it was like, oh, God is not insulted by my questions. You may be Mr. Priest, Mr. Pastor, Mr. Church, Mr. whatever, but God is too big to be minimized by my questions. Actually welcomes it, right? And so I began asking questions. And then there's a point where you decide. There's a point where you decide, you're like, okay, I'm done with the bull. Right? I am going to align myself with a higher purpose for my life and for the legacy that I want to leave behind. And then you begin to walk it out. And sometimes that walk, like I said with Edfu, that from the beginning of the temple through the courtyard to the Holy of Holies, sometimes that feels like the walk of shame. Sometimes it's 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. Sometimes you're like, what am I even doing? Like, is this even the right place to be? I don't see any signs. Lord, I need a sign. And sometimes you have to do it from a place of your own inner conviction, not external validation. And so I'm curious as to where you are in your spiritual journey and which one of those phases resonates the most with where you are now or where you've been. Who wants
Thank you. Whoa, thank you for this conversation. I'm learning as I go along, but I'm at the phase of aligning with my higher self, which Well, I came to that awareness on July 3rd. Yes, the night of July 3rd. I was practicing some forgiveness of myself when I actually came into that awareness of the higher self, of the inner child that I would always see outside of me, sitting in her little brown dress. And that night, the awareness that this child is within me, I shouted out, "Oh, this is what they call God." Yes, and it was just an amazing experience because most of my life I've been resistant to accepting because I just didn't know. And so I would say I'm at the Efu, the fourth temple, or where my solar plexus did open up so I could start feeling, is when I actually start feeling and release the numbness, the fight or flight syndrome. So this is so on point for me. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I remember when I connected my womb, when I realized that my womb is the earth. And I would ask sisters in my circles, what is this? Try to explain it to me, and nobody could until I start to get these downloads in my dream. And I start to make the connection with the moon cycle and my bleeding and all of that stuff. And I'm so thankful because I'm supposed to be actually doing a presentation and the connection with Mother Earth and sharing my experience. So this is just so on time. I thank you so much.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Laura. That's great. And the clarity that you have, right? Because sometimes when confronted with that question of where are you spiritually, sometimes you're in the valley and you're like, I don't even know which way is up, which way is down. I'm too far from where I started to turn back, and I'm too far from where I'm going to, to get any respite. And so I acknowledge you for your clarity. That's awesome. Who else has something to share?
Good morning. Good morning.
Hi.
Thank you so much. Oh my goodness, it's for my son. I asked you last week of the information to go to Egypt.
Oh yes, you did, and I forgot to send it to you, didn't I?
I'm not even. Listen, trust me. Don't worry, because my ancestors have been on a journey for a long, long time. And I remember my grandmother says, nothing happened before the time.
This is true.
And trust me, my spiritual journey has begun so many years ago. And one of the reasons I say so many years ago is because in the first few years of my spiritual journey, I was not a good listener.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, I can confess that when you start to be a good listener, you will not miss nothing.
Right.
It's come in your dream. It's come in message. It's they send you someone to lead the way, to lead the part. And that is the way. And I remember good 6 years ago, before a matter of fact, lie. That was not 6 years ago. That was 9 years ago. My niece, she went on a spiritual journey and she came back and she says, they sent me to give you a message. I said, yes, I waited for it. She said, oh my God. She said, your spiritual level have so she says, it's just so big that your aura it's so big that it touches the ceiling. So trust me, when you start on your spiritual journey and you're a good listener, everything just fall in place. Every single thing. The journey that I went to Jamaica, it was not me. It was spirit lead me to Jamaica to connect back with my ancestors. Yeah. Trust me, it's amazing. So when you started to speak about Egypt last week, I was already started to do some connection. But now you see, I say you just have to wait, because when your time is there, the Spirit lead you, and you are one of the. And when you touch the point, every single thing that you speak about this morning, I started to do research on that and started to connect, because Spirit lead me to Egypt. Thank you so much for the information. Thank you so much for. And matter of fact, I thank myself, and I also forgive myself for a lot of stuff. And people say, why are you asking for forgiveness? You have to ask for forgiveness at every given time for every single thing that you do on this planet Earth. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, my dear sister. Absolutely. I am so appreciative that you are one of my pillars of just continue journey. Thank you very much.
Big hugs to you, Rashida, and send me your email. I sent you a text. Send me your email so I can make sure I have it right and send it over to you. So part of I love what you're saying here, Rashida, because part of the walk is they feed and they stack on one another, right? The lower chakras. I just took you through the first 4. We haven't done the last 3 yet, right? And so in the same way as starting from the bottom and then you go upwards is the walk of ascension. Then when you come back down, just like Moses went up to the mountain and down with the 10 commandments, but again, that's another sermon for another Sunday. I don't want to confuse you with the different stories. But just as the going up is the walk of ascension, the walk down is the walk of manifestation, of making manifest the divine will. And so let me take you through those last 3, right? So that you can see, so you can get a fuller picture. Because once we are finished with that temple of Edfu, where the battle is fought and won, then we rise to Karnak temple. And Karnak temple represents your throat chakra. It represents where you are speaking. And just like abracadabra is an ancient Sanskrit phrase that means I create as I speak. When you don't understand that divine teaching, then you think it's magic. You think abracadabra is magic, but it's really I create as I speak is literally what it means. And so the throat chakra represents the power of the word, the power of creating from intention. Another Bible verse that says, in the beginning was the word, and the word was with God, and the word was God. And nothing was done without the word. And so in the same way, we have that power of the word, the power of the tongue to create in our own reality, not create circumstances necessarily, although they may touch there, but to create the experience, right? So I'm not necessarily uniquely responsible for the weather or for politics or whatever. That falls into the realm more so of collective consciousness. But I am the author of my own experience about it, even though I'm in the middle of a collective circumstance, right? So that's the throat chakra. Then you get to the 6th eye, the 6th sense, or the 3rd eye, as people call it. And that is represented by the temple of Luxor. Luxor and Karnak are a bit of sister, brother, husband, wife temples, because just as Karnak has that feminine energy of speaking it forth, Luxor has that masculine energy of the thought to be spoken, right? And so it's that intuition, it's that divine wisdom. It is that, you know how sometimes you go through life and you're like, I don't know how I know this. I just know that, right? Nobody told me, I didn't read it somewhere. I just know that. It's like this intuitive download or knowingness that you have. And that is an example of you being connected to divine intelligence, to universal source. There are parts of your wisdom that are not academic, that are not didactic. Some of it is experiential and some of it is just downloadable, right? And so that's what that represents. Luxor and Karnak represent the throat chakra and the 3rd eye, or the 6th sense, or your, they're actually all associated with glands, hormonal glands in the physical human body. Once again, another sermon for another Sunday. You have to come to Egypt so you can hear all of this stuff, because I talk about it in all of my Egypt lectures. And then finally, the 7th chakra is the crown chakra, and that's represented by the Great Pyramid. We actually take you to, you see the Sphinx, And we actually go into the Great Pyramid, and we actually go into the sarcophagus. We actually go into the Holy of Holies of the Great Pyramid. So if you decide to come to Egypt with us, you're just gonna have to re-up on your cardio now, okay? Because I'm gonna have you climbing pyramids when you go with me. And so part of what's so sweet about not only going to the Great Pyramid, but going inside of it, is this opportunity for you to, like, what does it feel to go into the depths of your consciousness? How can you in some way simulate the experience of going inside your own consciousness and seeing how vast it is and how connected to everything it is? Because the architects and the engineers that made and built the designed and built the Great Pyramid did so with a mind to geometry, with a mind to astronomy and astrology. So in certain times of the year, there are windows in the Great Pyramid that actually look up specific constellations. And once again, well, I'll discuss this inside of the Mystery School tour. But the opportunity that you have there is to connect with universal consciousness, with divine intelligence. So over here, it may be your own personal intuition, but over here, this is the collective. This is Akashic records. This is, again, divine intelligence. And so the opportunity and the invitation that I extend to you is sit with what we just talked about today and check in with yourself. You know, we always talk about check yourself before you wreck yourself from Ice Cube. And so you want to audit your own assumptions and just conduct an audit of your own consciousness of where am I? Where have I been? Where am I? And where do I wish to go to deepen and to mature and to evolve my spiritual health, right? And what's the next best step in order to do that? Maybe like Laura said, you know, there's some forgiveness works that needs to be done there. Maybe like Rashida, it's actually following an unction that you've been ignoring. Or perhaps it's about getting disciplined with habits that ground you into the repetitiveness of certain rituals allows you to then free up your mind so that you can be available for those downloads that you've not been present to. So I love that we are here. I want to hear from you. Any last thoughts that you have before we send you off to the day? Ron has something. Yes, Ron.
Yeah, this is amazing. It's amazing talk. You know, what's coming down there for me is like, I need to, I mean, it would be really interesting if you can share some pictures in one of those talk about Egypt. And you know, what's there for me is I've studied Egypt, you know, history of Egypt, particularly the architecture in Egypt for, you know, history of architecture. But and I'm thinking the relationship you are making with the chakra and you know, I'm not aware of those particularly, but is that a connection that you discovered, or is it something that is that is actually present there that you could because for me going there, and I have to really put that on my bucket list, to go in probably several trips will allow me to discover all that you've gotten there.
Yeah.
But, I mean, my first quest is an architectural quest to actually experience the space and experience how the space can really dictate, you know, all that you all the spiritual connection that you're mentioning right now.
Yeah, right.
Because to me is actually, yes, you know, somebody in a space can have a very potential or high response to your consciousness, but yet until you really allow that to happen or really sit into it to really allow it to happen. So just I guess it's more of a comment than a question, but you know, give me some feedback from what I just said.
Sure. So to answer your question about where did you learn all that stuff from, this is all it is through my studies. Yes, as you guys know, I have a PhD in comparative religions. So yes, I studied this stuff. But if you want to learn more about it, then by all means, send me a private message, DM me, and I can send you some more information about Egypt, whether you go with us or not, at least to get you started and some resources and so forth. Now, the thing that I'll say about architecture specifically and the physical space, one of the things that I have learned as a teacher, as a facilitator, is that people have a different ways of learning and of capturing and processing information. So there are some people, for example, when we go to Egypt, that benefit greatly from the talking out of it, right? So I send them resources and PDFs, and we do a class before we get there so they're not broadsided by all this information, because sometimes it can feel like you're drinking from a fire hose, right? So we do a great job of parsing it out so that people don't get overwhelmed by all of it. And it's also why people sometimes come back over and over again, right? I mean, this is going to be like my 12th trip or something. And so that's the opportunity, is that every time that you go, you learn something more, you put more and more things together. And also you're a different person. You are reconstituted differently every time that you go travel somewhere. And so the thing that I want to say about the architecture and the engineering aspect of it is that we have to remember that there was a time in human history that was not secular, that surrounded itself always with a bend, just like sunflowers and trees bend towards the sunlight. In the same way, there was a time in our history where we bent everything towards the divine. Everything was an act of adoration or an act of devotion or an act of sacrifice towards the divine. And so the architecture itself wasn't about, look how great I am, I built the Empire State Building. It was more like, look how great the universe is and how the divine has organized it. And let's do our part in order to align with that, right? And so when you can see, sometimes these things blow my mind, because when you get to be inside of the red pyramid, which is kind of like a bonus that would take you to, and you see like the perfection of those angles, like that wasn't with glue, that wasn't with, like, how did they people do this? You know, it blows your mind. And so to be able to study those things, like no matter where you go, it's kind of like one of the Psalms. It says, I can go to the depths of hell and I will still find you there too. Because that's the omnipresence of the divine. And so we see it in Egypt, where it's like, you see the divine everywhere. You see it in the way that the temples are organized, in the order in which they're organized, where they're placed along the River Nile, and the significance that has to the human anatomy and so forth. So there's so many pieces to be able to see and to recognize. And it's just kind of like, it really brings to the fore the conversation or the idea, the realization that the word universe really does mean one song, and that everything is singing that song of the divine. And you can tell that I can talk about this stuff forever and ever. Yeah. And we're already past time, but I really just, listen, if you want to know more about it, I can send you more info. Send me your email and I'll make sure to.
Yeah, I need to start putting some money together to.
Yes.
To travel to Egypt.
Absolutely. And then if you want to read a little bit more about the trip that we have planned for September of next year, so you can start putting your coins together, you can go to bit.ly, bit.ly/Sacred Egypt 2024. Sacred Egypt 2024, all one word. And I think the S and the E are capitalized. So if you do that, then you'll be able to get some more information. And then of course, just send me a message and I'll make sure to send you some of the private goodies in my personal library to make sure that you're educated about that as well. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here and for allowing us the extra few minutes. We appreciate you. Always remember, love generously, laugh a lot, give of yourself, your time, energy, attention. Eat more plant-based food, sleep at least 7 hours, stress less, move more, exercise. Remember that twerking is a Kundalini raising experience. And as always, audit your assumptions, check yourself before you wreck yourself. We love you. See you next time.
Thank you. Excellent job,
everybody.
I know.